Hey friends, so today I wanted to go over how I made the breastplate for my Sinister Seal Monster Hunter cosplay. It is finished now, which is why it took me a long time to get this video out, because I haven't been doing any editing. All I've been doing is working on this costume. And as you can see, it is all painted, and that will be the very last video. That is the last video I'm going to do, because painting was a whole thing in itself. That was a lot. If I included it in this, it would be like a 14,000 hour long video, and nobody wants that. All of the foam from this entire build, actually, except for the dual blades, was given to me by TheFoamory, which is by far my all-time favorite foam place. I love them so much. They have high density foam, so when you sand it, it's like it sands really smooth. So I've been using them for a really long time, so I'm very happy with them. But yeah, so thank you again to TheFoamory. So yeah, let's just go ahead and hop into how I made all this. The first step is to wrap myself in cling wrap and duct tape. This will give me a pattern that will fit me for making the breastplate. I also mark out the general shape of the breastplate. Next, I cut it off of me, and then I mark out the darts so that the breastplate will be rounded. However, this is not the final pattern. I ended up remaking the cups because they just weren't round enough, so this is not like the final thing. So then I cut everything out and I put it on a 6mm foam, which was given to me by TheFoamory. Thank you, Foamory. And then I cut them out. I used barge to glue everything together, and I also heat shape it while I'm gluing it to give the cups a more rounded shape, which again, they're not very round here, but that's fine. I'll fix it later. And as you can see, this is when I changed the cup shape quite a bit. This is the final rendition, and it is actually a modified Kamui Cosplay sci-fi breastplate pattern. I printed out a pattern I made of the actual design, and then I marked out where all the layered details are gonna go. Then I filled any gaps with quick seal, and I used water to smooth it all down. For the layered spike details on the cups, I put my patterns on the 6mm and 4mm foam, and I cut them out. Next, I kind of just start making the tape patterns, especially for this bottom of the cup piece, which holds the side of the purple pieces. It's kind of weird to explain, but it'll make sense. There's so many spikes. This costume has so many spikes, and is not even the spikiest Monster Hunter armor, but there's still just so many spikes. I 3D printed all of the gems on this costume. I just modeled them in Blender, and then I printed them out on my Ender 3 Pro. I made the outer casing for the chest gem out of 4mm foam. I highly recommend Kamui Cosplay Husband's Benny's 3D print tutorial. That was a lot to say. I will link it. This is the weird stomach spike. It is made out of 4mm foam. I made the pattern in paint.net, and I printed it out so that it would be the perfect size. Next, I get to sand everything, and since I just got LASIK done, I no longer have my glasses to protect my eyeballs, so I got this full face shield that's rainbow. I love it. I sand everything smooth with a 240 grit sanding drum. For this entire costume, I sanded in these bone lines with the very edge of the sanding drum. I use a lot of pressure at the base of the spike, and I lifted up my Dremel as I go down the spike. This creates a more gradual looking crack. A lot of butt cracks in this video. So much sanding. There was a lot of sanding involved in this costume. I also went in with my detail bits for these smaller, different sized cracks. We do not discriminate crack sizes here on this channel. Blasting the foam with heat opens up all of the cracks I just made, and it closes the pores on the foam as well as melts away any sanding fuzzies. Now I can start gluing everything on, so I started with the middle piece. Then the top spike, middle, bottom, and then these two protrusions. I used 2mm foam for this layered piece that goes around the stomach spike. And then I sketched out where I'll be putting foam glade to make Magnum Alo's cute little nipples. I mean spikes, more spikes. Definitely not nipples, just spikes. I used water to glue the foam clay, and then I used my clay sculpting tools to shape everything and add more cracks. Now it's time to make the undershirt. So I got 2 yards of this white netting and I had to dye it red. So I used Rit Dye's Dye More Race Car Red. I think that's the name of it. I think it's Race Car Red. Good soup. To make the shirt, I taped half of my dress form to make the pattern, and it's like a fun little crop top. Fashion, somebody call Vogue. Ooh, a little V-slit for my tibby space. A boob pouch. I made the base out of pleather and I used Velcro to attach it. There's so much Velcro in this costume. I went through like 2 rolls of it. Next, I put the pattern onto the netting and I cut it out. Once cut out, I pinned it onto the top I made. Sometimes I just do very painful, mind-numbing work to get the project just right. And so this time I decided the netting was just too small compared to the reference. So I was like, why not take the time to cut every other X to make it bigger? Yes, why not? This took forever. My hand hurt, but it does look really good. And these details, I wasn't expecting these cool little details and little cool bumps. I don't know, it looks really cool. I'm so happy with it. Here I hot glued down the netting. I don't know why I didn't just sew it. I sewed it on the rest of the costume, but on the crop top piece I glued it. I don't know why I did that. Anyway, I made my own edging by cutting out strips of linen, and then I airbrushed them red to match the netting. Then I pinned them onto the edges of the shirt and I sewed them on. Next, I made an anti-human device because if the dual blades don't work, this handy little accessory will surely keep random people from getting too close to me at cons and protruding out of my back about 15 inches. I made the pattern in paint.net and I cut it out of 6mm foam. Here I am making the back of the armor. There are these 2 shoulder spike things that are connected to the breastplate via this neck piece. The anti-human device gets glued right under the neck/shoulder piece. Here I'm tracing out these shoulder spikes. I cut 4 pieces out of 10mm foam and I glued 2 together since they look a little bit thick. For the spine piece, I made a pattern on my dress form, cut it out of 4mm foam. I glued the inner pieces together since the middle of my back, it curves like a lot. So I needed it to curve inward to go with the curve of my back. So anyway, that's why I did that. It curves a little bit. These little strips go on the outside. These little white pieces of paper are the spine pieces that I designed. I make them out of 4mm foam. I add 10mm foam down the middle, which will be sanded a little bit to be round. And then I make these little fun spikes out of 6mm foam. So here's the layout before sanding, and here's the after. To get to that point, I had to sand, like a lot of sanding. It was so cold in my garage. Anyway, I'm using my 240 grit sanding drum to sand down all the edges and smooth everything out. And here you can see the difference. Butts cracks! This is the neck piece. I'm just adding these fun little details even though most of it is hidden by the pauldrons. I know it's there, and that's all that matters. Once again, I heat everything up and I open up them cracks and I close the foam pores. Then I just assemble everything with barge. And that's the spine. It attaches to the bodysuit with Velcro. Speaking of the bodysuit, I got this pleather bodysuit off of Amazon. I got one a few sizes too big for me because my body is very weird. I am extremely bottom heavy, so regular sizing just will not work for me because it will not fit over my hips. So I tried it on, shortened it, which fixed the problem of it being too long, but then I turned to the side and I look like that fish, that bullied SpongeBob. What's his name? Is his name Flats? Hold on. Oh my god, I was right. I'm old and I remember that. Okay, anyway. I look like Flats. So anyway, I took in the sides and that worked. Also, yes, the zipper does go all the way to the back. Next, I just finished assembling the back piece. And I added this neck guard that's made from 6mm foam as well as the spine piece at the top. The shoulder blade spikes were wrapped with a strip of 10mm foam. I printed out more gems to glue onto the breastplate. And the strange looking pattern is actually this purple thing here on the side. It folds up and it's kind of like weird. But anyway, I made that out of 2mm foam. I cut it and sanded it to look like feathers, basically. They're glued into the back and they attach in the front on those little hooks with some Velcro. I also made the collar out of pleather and I made my pattern onto my dress form since we share a neck size. And now to start the backup anti-human devices, which are the Pauldrons. I load up my reference photos in paint.net and I traced out a pattern for them. Real quick, when I say I put them in paint.net, I sized a picture of me to 5'7". I took my reference picture and I sized it to me, which is sized at 5'7". So when I make patterns, it's my size. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. I also love making very realistic costumes. I absolutely can't wait to be able to raise my arms above my head and just clip through my pauldron. That's going to be great. So I made a pauldron pattern and I put it onto 10mm foam. Each pauldron has 2 layers, so they are 20mm thick. And then I start on the spikes. The smaller ones are made of 4mm foam. I cut them out and beveled the insides with the spikes, aka hold my blade at an angle, which forms an angle on the foam, and then I glue them together and that forms a point. And blam! Wablam! Why? What in the world was I thinking when I wrote the script? Spikes! Anyway, spikes.
The big one.
Once I cut everything out for the pauldrons, it was time to sand. I start with my 120 grit sanding drum to get the proper shape, and then I smooth it out later with a 240. Again, I heat everything up and make it look nice and pristine. Then I just assemble all the spikes into place. The pauldrons get attached to the neck piece, which also gets attached to the breastplate, which is attached to your leg bone. Your leg bone is attached to your foot bone, and then your toe bone probably goes in there, and then your shoe bone gets attached. Everyone has a shoe bone, right? And then I get into the breastplate like a shell, basically. Same thing as my Daedric armor. It's my own little shell. I'm a little turtle, and it gets just Velcroed down. I always forget to film the plasti dipping, but I did give everything 2 coats of plasti dip, and that is where I'll end this because the painting is going to be at the very end, and that is it. Is that kind of fun? Is that fun? I don't know. We're gonna put them back though before I break them. And thank you so much for hanging out with me while I built this. I hope it was informative or entertaining. Thank you so much to TheFoamory again for giving me all this foam. It was really fun to make this, and I can't wait to make my next thing. But first, I gotta release all these videos, so that will be a thing. I will be wearing this at Anime Central in May, so if you are going, I will be wearing this on Saturday, and I hope to see— is that a spider? Anyway, have a super awesome rest of the day, and I will see you guys in the next build video. Bye!